Now I want to talk about something very important. How do I pick a madhab? Answer is very simple. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, who is most worthy of following? Which scholar, based on his life and his methodology, is most worthy of following? That's how simple it is. So Qadi Iyad says a beautiful thing. Ijtihadul ammi, or ijtihadul muqallid. The ijtihad of the non-scholar is to study and come to a conclusion on who is most worthy of following. So our ijtihad is like using your mind, thinking. The ijtihad of the non-scholar, us, regular people, is to study the four imams. Not necessarily just their personalities, because all the luminaries of Islam are pious. Okay? But it's to study their methodology. In the previous video, I mentioned about the four madhabs, how their methodologies slightly differ. Okay? And how they treat the sunnah, and which sahabi they lean to more than others. For example, the Hanafi school is essentially Sayyidina Ali bin Abi Talib and Abdullah bin Mas'ud's narrations. The Maliki school, you could say, is Umar and Aisha and Abu Huraira that they rely on most. Okay? So the idea of a madhab is that we all need to use our brains and study the methodologies of these four madhabs. Right? And then that's how we make a choice. If all the madhabs are valid, okay, then why do I need to pick one? Why don't I go in every issue, right, and pick the easiest one? Or pick the one that's most convincing to me? So I'm going to tell you the ruling on that. And if you're going to behave that way, then there are some caveats, there are some things you need to observe. But I'll tell you firstly why that's not a methodology. Okay. What you're doing is rendering yourself the referee of these great imams when you don't even have 1/10 of the qualifications to do so. That's number one. Number two, you don't want to look at the conclusions. The right way to do anything, okay, and Allah says, كيف تحكمون? How do you judge? The right way to do something is not right, to look at the conclusions and pick from there and work backwards. The right way to do something is to say, what's the methodology? What's the right way things should be done? It's to choose a methodology. This is the right method. This is the right way to do things. Okay? And I'm following that all the way through. So that's the right way, and that's why it's a critique, and the methodology of they're all valid, let me just choose one, okay? Or in each situation, I'll choose what's best for me, what I agree with most, or what's easier. In one sense, you're elevating your intellect beyond where you're out of your pay grade. In the other one, you're elevating your whims and your desires and your laziness. Okay? Now, people are going to do that. So let me give you at least, so that you don't make too much of a mistake, right? Some conditions you need to observe. Number one, you need to choose for each madhab, for each act of worship, all right, one madhab. In other words, you cannot mix between two or three madhabs in one action. And the famous example that all the scholars give is the example of marriage. The contract in marriage, according to Malik, does not need witnesses. Witnesses are only needed before consummation, but the contract itself does not need two witnesses. That means the father of the bride, the groom, all right, they can contract the marriage right then and there. But before the man enters privately into a private space with his wife, then they need witnesses. So the contract is valid without witnesses. Well, with Abu Hanifa, the contract is valid without a wali. If you combine the two, you end up with a marriage contract. Oh, the wali is the guardian. If you combine the two, you end up with a marriage contract that's not valid with anybody. Nobody considers a marriage contract valid if there's no wali and no witnesses. So in each act of ibadah, wudu, you need to follow one of the madhabs. It needs to be sound in one of the madhabs. Well, why can't I mismatch them up? Because nobody did that, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "La taqfu ma laysa laka bihi ilm." Don't invent your own things. You're not qualified. You don't have certain knowledge. Right? So it has to be valid in one. That's the first caveat. Second caveat, if you want to be a mixer and a matcher, and you want to treat the madhabs like a Chinese buffet, then in that case, Don't tell anyone to do that. Don't gather followers. You're not worthy of follow. You can't. Now, take this methodology and say, all right, everyone do what I'm doing. Okay? Keep it to yourself. And inshallah, you are incorrect in your methodology, but you're not sinful. If you want to be that type of mixer and matcher, and you observe these two conditions, then you're not sinful. All right, now we're going to look at a question that comes all the time. The Prophet, the Quran said, اليوم أكملت لكم دينكم وأتممت عليكم نعمتي ورضيت لكم الإسلام دينا. Today I've completed your religion and completed your blessing, my blessing upon you. So how can you say now that there are more? Why do we need these madhabs? As we said, the foundations, the methodologies are finished. Yes, the foundational, the aqidah, the foundations of our law is finished. But there are constantly new matters, and there are matters Allah has left to the ulama. This is why He said, ask the scholars and not read more Quran. Okay? So that's number one. Number two, madhabs. What do people imagine the madhabs are? Do they imagine the madhabs are trying to find some unique ideas outside of Islam and then put them inside of Islam? Madhabs are meant to understand what the Quran is saying in the first place. So they are an explanation of this blessing that Allah Ta'ala has told us. The religion is complete. The blessing is complete. Now the question is, well, what does a blessing mean? What does this religion mean? What do the verses mean? What do the hadith mean? How do we act upon them? That's what the madhabs are answering, not bringing anything new so that you could say the religion is finished and we don't need anything new. Next question I want to answer is a question people say, the deen is easy, and I find following a madhab difficult. Rather, they say, for example, it's much easier to just see what people are doing and go with your local community. Look, Abdullah bin Mas'ud said, "Kun aliman aw muta'alliman wa la takun imma'a." Be a scholar or be a student, but do not be a roaming animal. The imma just follows the herd. What is the imma here? It's the lazy person. He's lazy. Okay? This attitude, oh, the deen is easy. Why do I need to go in these big books and learn terminologies? Why do I need to stick to one thing and sometimes I don't like the ruling? What is the basis of this other than laziness? The deen is easy, okay? And it's easier when you put effort in learning what it is, learning its methodology, okay? And then living by that and studying. It becomes even easier. It's harder to follow something that you don't study and you don't know than to follow something that you do know. I'm telling you, the Prophet ﷺ said this, and you're telling me Abu Hanifa said that, okay? You hear this all the time, and it's a scary question because, hold on a second, are we following the Prophet or are we following Abu Hanifa? The assumption here is that Abu Hanifa and Malik and Shafi and Ahmed, they're following the Torah or something. What are they trying to follow? The question is your understanding of the hadith versus Abu Hanifa's understanding of hadith. You know what one person told me? He said, I cannot follow a man-made opinion. These are all the efforts of men. I only follow the book and the sunnah. Okay, you follow the book and the sunnah according to your understanding. Okay? According to your understanding. So in fact, is your understanding any less man-made than Abu Hanifa, Malik, Shafi, and Ahmed? Okay? So really the question is, your understanding of the sunnah versus Abu Hanifa's understanding of the sunnah. That's really the question. Your filter, your mind, the filter of your mind versus the filter of Abu Hanifa and Malik's and Shafi and Ahmed's mind. All else equal, what would you rather follow? Your own conclusion or a Shafi'i's conclusion? You're going to go to Allah with one more deed to go. Okay? You're 50-50. You got one more deed. You want to go and judge on it yourself, or you want to say, look, a Shafi'i was trying to get to the same goal that I'm trying to get to, which is understand the religion properly. Malik is trying to get to the same goal that I'm trying to get to. Who's more reliable? Who's more trustworthy? Whose words and conclusion has been checked and checked and checked and checked over the centuries? Them or me? So it's not the Prophet or Malik. It's your understanding of the Prophet versus Malik. And it's not the local. There are scholars who built their empire of knowledge on this idea. We only go back to the book and the sunnah. Hold on a second, Mr. Scholar. Then why are you writing a book? Why are you giving speeches? If you're only going on the book and the sunnah, then leave us to the book and the sunnah. Why are you writing a book? because you are nonetheless categorizing, prioritizing, and interpreting the book and the sunnah. So the question is not prophet or Malik. The question is Malik or you. Your understanding or Malik's understanding. Another question I want to bring up. Someone may say there are centuries that pass between the Imams and between us. Centuries. Don't we need to revive? We need new madhabs. This is a misunderstanding. If you think that to be a Maliki means to go and only read the words of Imam Malik, you're making a big mistake. To be a Hanafi or Shafi'i or Hanbali is that you're only reading the words of those Imams, you're making a big mistake. Times changed after those Imams. Those followers used that methodology and answered those questions. Times changed again. New questions were posed. Okay? Those disciples answered them again using the original methodology. Madhahib are living things in the sense that generation after generation, they're constantly answering new questions. When you're studying a school, you're studying a whole heritage that is following a certain methodology. And questions, this is why Imam Nawawi is such a elevated figure in the Shafi'i school. But from the time of Shafi'i to Nawawi, a lot of things changed. A lot of new things came into the world, and Nawawi answered them. Okay? Same thing in every madhab. Until today. Okay? Next video, I'm going to answer the question of why can't new madhabs come about.